This is International Forum. It's all about the Russia-Ukraine war, the impact of Trump's, position. Because as it stands right now, people are like saying that the way Donald J. Trump is going about it, it might not be the way the world leaders are expecting it to go about it. And that might just cause, how will I put it now, a destabilizing factor in the Russia-Ukraine war that might just favor the Russians. Well, with me here in the studio is a vibrant young man, an entrepreneur, political analyst, but local and international political analysis. He's quite in-depth. Join me to welcome Honorable Etiosa Igbo. I like calling him Sonny. I wonder why that is. Maybe the days are always sunny with him, all right? Welcome, Honorable Etiosa.
Good afternoon.
I appreciate your coming. All right. And joining us via Zoom all the way from the U.S., New Jersey, is Honorable Ehi Egariba. Honorable, it's a pleasure to have you grace our occasion this afternoon.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon, co-discussant, and have a blessed day, viewers.
So I want to start off with Honorable Etiosa Igbo. I know that right from the word go, you never liked the stand of Vladimir Zelensky. I don't know if it has changed so far. You're like saying that the war is quite needless, and you were like, hoping that when Donald Trump comes into the same things might just go the way we envisioned, that it might just go talking about stopping the war in a matter of weeks. Counting from when Donald Trump assumed office, but right now he's beginning to talk tough, beginning to give conditions that are not that palatable to the EU, even to US allies. They don't like what this man is doing, but what do you feel about it?
Yeah, well, I think it's a step in the right direction. Just like you said, we have loads of conversation along these lines to do with the war issues. I just felt that the war was unnecessary, and a lot of innocent people have died over the war, both young kids, women, and children. I still don't understand why, when the world is already so close with regards to diplomatic interface, and you have missions in every country as a vassal, and then the only way you can resolve conflict is through the barrel of the gun. I've always been against that, and my stance has not changed, of course. Because before I make any decision, especially informed ones like this, I always make sure that I think it through and I understand exactly what may have transpired. I look at a bit of the history. I look at where we are, if things are getting better or getting worse, and I use that to phantom the direction of what I think should happen in the near future. So I think what Donald Trump is doing to me is exceptional. It's very, very amazing for a man in his presidency, in the area that he's doing well as a president, to tell us that he doesn't want young kids dying. He doesn't want young people dying. Because I don't understand the reason why the war is going on, because everything has gone up, skyrocketed through the roofs. The cost of living in America, Canada, England, Germany has gone up. And I recently went to, the US, England, and Canada. Things are very expensive now. And it's all down to the war. So for Donald Trump to come in now and kind of have a different direction to the initial one, caused by Biden and his people, I think it's really a good thing, because it's about bringing peace to the table. With Zelensky, just like Donald Trump said, for 3 years, you had the opportunity to negotiate. You didn't bother to do that. You're living off the field, and you're pushing your innocent people in your country to get, shot and killed. Yeah, I think Zelensky presidency is a disaster, because from a comedian to a president, and then what he faces is hostility. Because I think the bottom line of the whole disagreement is just NATO.
NATO?
Yeah, if it doesn't intend to join NATO, there will be no problem.
We'll come to that. Let's move over to New Jersey, where Honorable Ehi Egariba is standing. But Honorable, what do you feel about this? Taking a look at what really led to this war. As it stands right now, Donald Trump is beginning to call Zelensky a dictator after all, since the war started. and it was time for them to conduct an election. They couldn't do that because of the war, and Zelensky has been there for quite a while without election, like a year or two, if my calculation is like, correct. Now, what do you feel about the concept of Zelensky being labeled a dictator by Donald J. Trump?
The United States remains the bastion and the leader of the democratic world. And as a result, the United States President Donald Trump was right in saying that Zelensky has overstayed his tenure that he was elected for
Yeah, continue, we can hear you.
in war. But there are certain parliamentary approvals that are needed, if you are to bypass elections or postpone elections or suspend elections during conflict situations. I don't think Zelensky has gone back to the Ukraine parliament to ask for an extension of time such that he can prosecute this war. They have just carried on as though they are no longer in a democracy. No matter what happens, America is always going to call for elections as I went due. And if they are to advert that or not conduct those elections, there should have been some form of parliamentary approval. But we cannot say all of this without situating the ongoing situation in Ukraine. We started in 2014, with the unprovoked annexation of Crimea by Russia. And I think that was where the world stood still and made its first mistake, especially Europe, because they erroneously had thought that Russia was going to stop with the annexation of Ukraine. They imposed sanctions, very limited sanctions, which were not enough to stop the embodiment of Putin to go, all out. 8 years down the line, 3 years yesterday, and they went back into Ukraine to try to, grab some more. As a matter of fact, they had intended to swiftly, because Putin had tagged it a special military operation. So his intention was to swiftly overthrow Zelensky, who was, in his opinion, pro-West, and NATO. And Putin had made it very emphatic, in times past that he did not want and would not tolerate Ukraine becoming a member of NATO. He did not, in his words, say, he said, I do not want NATO at my doorsteps, and he wanted, and one of the security guarantees he wanted was that Ukraine should be exempted from a NATO membership. And once he saw that a pro-West president had been elected, so he had to quickly move swiftly. So Putin can claim self-defense, proactive self-defense, or Ukraine too can, like self-defense, like I saw the enemy coming, so I acted in self-defense to stop them in their tracks because I knew where this was going on. While Ukraine on the other hand, can also claim self-defense, like, oh, Russia had invaded us and we needed to defend ourselves. So it's been a calamity for Europe. And taking a huge toll on the American economy too, because it's close to $70 billion, 69 point something billion has been expended. That is cool. That is huge. That is huge. And in Europe too, Germany is the third largest economy in the world, the largest economy in Europe. They are in their third year of recession, and mostly due to what they have suffered from the Ukraine war. Gas prices have gone up because they used to depend largely on Russia for gas. And so it's been a calamity for global reception and the economy. All of us have been affected all the way to Nigeria. Grain prices have gone up, with Ukraine being largely responsible for a huge sum of the grain that comes across the world. And so it had to stop. So for me, there are two political school of thoughts that comes to mind here. They are the realists, and they are the idealists. For me, the reality today is the war must stop, and so I side with Donald Trump, and I believe this is the right thing to do.
Okay. I will definitely come back to you. But when they had this first day in Saudi Arabia, yeah, Honorable Chiosai Gebo, Ukraine was not present. Don't you think that might just sound a kind of a warning to Zelensky that this meeting or this particular agreement that they will reach will eventually not favor Ukraine? After all, how can you have a meeting with Russia? You have a meeting also with U.S. allies, some of them, but the main country's representative being led by the president, Zelensky, wasn't present.
A president that is given a helping hand, a president that is handed handouts, a president that does not have the capacity to defend his country, but is constantly looking to fight a superpower. What is he doing on that table in the first few weeks? There's no big deal if Ukraine is not on the table, because like they rightly said, he's had over 3 years. All I've seen is Zelensky, time after time, allowing Russia to destroy the beautiful country Ukraine. It's like he doesn't understand the contingencies or the ideology of warfare. War thing is not something you just get up as a leader.
But he was trying to defend his own territorial integrity. What is bad in that?
Well, I think the history has been very long. It's not something that started yesterday. Even before Zelensky was born, I'm sure the idea of the USSR around Ukraine and the formation has been there. Don't you never forget that Russia has a business to do with Ukraine, because the Nord Stream pipelines passes through Ukraine and they get their royalty paid. But for somebody that was a comedian performing on stage for President Putin, who has come from the KGB platform as a man who understands power and how he uses power to maintain law and order, with all due respect, is different from Zelensky, who was gone into war and he doesn't know how to come back up the war. So when Trump came on board, we are talking about people dying. We are talking about babies killed. We are talking about young women and men being executed. The things you don't see. War is a horrible business. It's not something you want to do when countries are using hypersonic and supersonic weapons on you. It's not something you want to see when countries like Russia that produce its own arms is using guided missile bombs and cluster bombs on you. At what point is Zelensky going to put up his foot and be like, look, I need to stop and negotiate? He has lost more ground. He's losing more ground by the day. Because why? Zelensky is relying on the country to supply them arms. So which means powers is not right in his hands. If, for example, he produces nuclear weapon, I'm sure by now would have used it. And Russia would have obviously responded because he seems to enjoy the war.
Zelensky enjoying the war.
I feel that he seems to enjoy the war because he's not in the front line. His countrymen and women are the ones facing the routes. They're not really trained to even combat and fight with the enemies or against the enemy. But it constantly goes back to ask for more weapons and more money, when as a matter of fact, the money and the billions of dollars that have been given to them, to Ukraine, that is a corrupt country as far as we are concerned.
As far as you are concerned?
Yeah, as far as I am concerned, because those weapons and money is being siphoned through the back door. And a lot of those weapons are landing in the sub-Saharan Africa as well because of the black market of arms sales. If Zelensky was sensitive to the plight of his people, I think what he should have been doing before now is to find a way to bring back dialogue on the table. He's saying, I want nothing on the table, and nobody believes, I don't believe that Ukraine has the capacity to ever defeat Russia. When I was listening to the US president speak of recent, he says, they've turned the whole country into a rubble. If Russia wanted to go after Kiev, they would turn it into a rubble as well, which means the people there will be gone. So when the president does not exhibit human feelings and is kind of gas, it looks to me like an agent. Somebody who is being used to destroy his own people. So for him not to be on that round table in these initial stages is a way of them to kind of really talk to the bigger men like Russia, who is now working with a bigger man from the US angle to have a kind of a common ground of understanding before they bring in this small man who is crying that he's being kicked every day and his people are dying, he doesn't care. He does not have any path to peace. You can understand why he was never there. So I believe as time goes on, they will bring him in or bring other more exposed-minded people from Ukraine in, more matured people, who can then also help him as president to engage in better dialogue. Because you and I know today that there's no way the dialogue will go If they had of 40, 60 chances before, say Russia have 60% chance of an advantage comparative, and Ukraine has 40. After this war with the bad and blood that has gone cross path, I'm sure Ukraine leverage is probably around 15, 20% now.
All right. Now, let's get straight down to where Honorable Ehie Gareba is at. Now, I'm going to ask you the same question. You know, the truce meeting held in Saudi Arabia, Zelensky was exempted. He really wanted to be there, but he was exempted. Now, that is on one hand. Now, on the other hand, how do you view this particular intent of the United States, led by Donald Trump, asking for minerals in Ukraine to give them further assistance?
Thank you. I think it would have been premature to have Zelensky at the table, negotiation table in Saudi Arabia for now, because Russia has obviously played a long game, which is they have patiently waited for this day where they would, because the kind of political guarantee of stay in power that Putin has, he's been in power in Russia for over 20 years, gives him the ability to play the long game. In the United States, there's been change in power. Like the presidency has changed since the war began. In 3 years ago, the as just a couple of days ago, the German have had the election, so Olaf Schwarz is going. Maybe we are going to have Friedrich Merz. Then in the UK, there's also been a change in power. So the Russian president is smart. He understands the power game around Europe, that once the economic pressure comes as a result of the over-reliance on Russian gas, which has led to a lot of increase in gas prices. There's going to be discontent amongst the electorate, and some of them will be voted out of power. It's also affected the United States here, because there's been a hike in prices, which was one of the main reasons why the Democrats were voted out of power. So it's cross-board. So he waited patiently, held his lines, and just kept the war going. So right now, he holds the aces, in the sense that there are only two possible outcomes to this war as of today. It's either a Russian victory, or there is negotiations. And negotiations will mean some of Ukraine territories will obviously be ceded to him, and he will eventually have the security guarantees, which will be Ukraine's exclusion from NATO for the foreseeable future. With that being said, so it was not uh, it was not reasonable at this point to bring Zelensky into the picture, because he really does not hold any ace at the moment in this war. But can you please ask the other question again?
Sure, I'm talking about the price of mineral of Donald Trump was asking for in form of payment for them to keep supporting Ukraine. The lithium, those kind of rare elements on planet Earth is like, in abundance in the region Russia have annexed, and they are talking about give us those mineral for us to have a good deal. What have you to say about that? But just hold on. You're going to answer that question after we return from this break. Don't go away. Thank you so much for staying till you just joined us. This is International Forum. We are still going over to New Jersey, where Honorable here is standing by. Now, Honorable, the question of rare elements, the question of minerals in Ukrainian soil that the U.S. is asking for them to start supporting, the fight of Ukraine to, protect their territorial integrity, and Donald Trump asking Zelensky to come pay back the billions of dollars in aids given to them in the prosecution of the war that the U.S. as a country supported at the onset?
Well, I think Donald Trump, I have to give it to him, is a master in terms of, he has great knowledge and insight, and he's very forceful when he's pushing for national interest. He understands the power play, and he tries not to be a Father Christmas. Like, if we are losing close to $70 billion in aid to Ukraine, what is in it for us? That is national interest. You must ask. It's like, unfortunately, like when Nigeria went on a foray to Liberia, we did not ask for anything in return. We just funneled all of those resources away with no economic gains to us, with no push for our national interests. We're playing Big Brother Africa. He's saying, no, we don't do that. If you want security guarantees from us, if you want us to keep you in constant supply of ammunition to defend your territorial integrity, because Russia has no, Europe needs to curtail Russia, than America needs to curtail Russia. But the US is a nuclear power, so it's not possible for Russia to attack the United States. It's going to lead to a mutually assured destruction. So that's enough deterrent, for both countries not to attack each other. But most of Europe don't have that capacity to forestall Russian attack. So he's saying, look, we want some of those monies back. And don't forget that Ukraine have about 5% of the critical raw materials in the world today, which include especially graphite. Graphite is used to make batteries for electric vehicles, which is the direction the whole world is going to. And Ukraine have as much as 20% of the world's graphite. So the United States is saying, no, we need access to that because we are evolving and we are the leading country today in EV manufacturing. And so we want some of those minerals. And Ukraine is going along. In President Trump's meeting with Emmanuel Macron of France, yesterday, he has spoken that Ukraine was close to signing the deal to hand over those minerals. And I think that is a very deft move in national interest of the United States.
All right, I will come back to you. Honorable Tegara, what do you feel about this? At your side, anyone? At your side, Gilbert, sorry. What do you feel about this move, asking for the money you spent that your own country agreed to give today to procure the war? And right now, you as a new president, you're saying, give us back the money. And of course, we're interested in this mineral for us to keep helping you. They think they're trying to twist Zelensky. Do you think they are giving those regions occupied right now by Russia on a platter to Vladimir Putin?
Well, I don't think that is what President Donald Trump means. I think what it means is going forward, haven't persecuted the war this far, and the U.S. has put this much in. We really haven't gotten anything. He says Europe has gotten something. Maybe the Europeans are doing that, getting those minerals already before now. And the U.S. don't have that in terms of prosecuting the war. They would have benefited any other way, because, nothing goes for nothing. However, what I think is, after peace, there is the need to constantly protect the territorial integrity. So whatever the U.S. needs to contribute to that process, whether it is NATO or otherwise, because Donald Trump kept saying that the U.S. has put in more than European countries put in with NATO. So we need something to kind of give value to what we are putting in. So maybe if they're going on in the next 10, 15, 20 years and the U.S. playing their role as the big brother, they want to be able to deal with Ukraine to purchase their special minerals in turn for military protection. Not to say maybe that the Trump wants to recover his money that has been spent. I don't think that is what the case is, because the fault of this war also lies on the pressure from the previous U.S. government under Joe Biden.
Yeah.
So, however, what Trump is doing is bringing in the business idea into governance, national interest of America. Let America give you this and benefit that. At least Trump is honest enough to say it openly. Or like in our climates here, for example, in Nigeria, those minerals are taken through the back door. They don't even want the country's government to earn those money because they believe that they have the capacity to override it, just like, Europe has probably been dealing with Zelensky. But, just to digress a bit on what my brother said, that the Europeans cannot defend themselves. The reason why it looks that way is because they've relied on NATO, and that assurance of providing for NATO has been a U.S. thing. Now that they've been pushed back, France was previously a superpower. Germans were sometime in the past a superpower. The United Kingdom was once a superpower. The Roman Empire in Italy was once a superpower. They have the capacity to develop their own arms. They have the capacity to develop their own fighter jets. They have the capacity, they have nuclear weapons as well. I don't think Russia will just get up and attack Europe if it knows that they've not demobilized most of their military war machineries. Like I remember sometime in England, they demobilized an aircraft carrier. That can equally come back. You know, England has the capacity to build war machines and defend themselves. If Europe comes together, they do have that idea to do that. And I believe that is what they'll be doing, irrespective of what the US will do with NATO. So for Donald Trump to negotiate that for America, it is partly because he wants to put back into the pocket of America, knowing fully well that the war that was created was led by, in quote, Joe Biden, who he feels does not even understand governance, in collaboration with his European partners of the same like minds. And why he praises the Prime Minister of Italy, the lady, because she's more of a liberal Democrat. To say she's a good leader. She's actually leading Italy well. It doesn't have much on Italy. But then with the other European countries who has interest in supplying arms and making money from whatever they are getting, he practically just goes against those ideology. So Trump is after the Joe Biden cabal across Europe and going into war without nothing, and at the same time, in his own calculation, that the US is providing ammunition for nothing. I'm sure by telling Ukraine what to do and what not to do, that is another area where the US exercises its power over Ukraine, because life is about power, who controls power, who controls the resources, and who controls the people.
All right. Now let's move straight down to New Jersey. We're on the way here. Gary standing by. Don't forget the conditions given by Russia. You have to disarm your soldiers, leave the Donbass region, go home, the war will be over. And Macron was like, look, for us to strike a deal, even if Zelensky might not be in the picture, you will not have the right to seize those lands that were occupied in Ukraine. How do you think that Trump will wriggle around this? Because it's like, from the grapevine, Russia may just keep their kill. Talking about those lands subdued by Russia, which originally belonged to Ukraine.
Well, so today, I think about 20% of Ukraine territory is under Russian control. And I think it's almost going to be impossible for Russia to give back those territories, because that was one of the objectives of the special military operations that Putin had ordered, 3 years ago. And going by what the Ukraine finance minister said a couple of days ago, that as we speak, about $350 billion worth of minerals are in those territories that have been seized by Putin. So this is enough motivation for Putin not to want to give those territories back to Ukraine, because underneath those territories lies immense, wealth, minerals that are worth $350 billion, which, more than cover all the amount that Russia, spent to prosecute that war. So I don't expect Russia to give back the territories, and Ukraine just want to stop this, because up till this point, you have about I think about 8 million Ukrainians are displaced within the country. Another 8 million have fled the country. That's 16 million. And Ukraine population prior to this war was just about 41 million. So if you take 16 million out, both displaced and those who have left the country, that means Ukraine have suffered a lot, and with on both sides over 1 million casualties. So they want to end the war, and I don't see Russia ceding those territories back, because as we speak, they seem to hold the aces, especially with Trump's support. Don't forget there was a vote at the United Nations yesterday, and the United States for the first time in the last 3 years voted alongside, they voted in support or alongside Russia, North Korea, and Belarus for the first time, not voting along with NATO or Europe. So that is a strong enough message to Ukraine, which needs United States support. Is very critical for their survival and sustenance of this defense or war. So if the U.S. have tactically sent a message across to Ukraine that we need you to stop this war, Ukraine will have no choice but to comply. And I think that is what the United States and Russia are doing in Saudi Arabia, trying to find some kind of common ground that will make the Russians happy and get a fair deal for Ukraine and present whatever has been put together to Ukraine to study, and hopefully they're able to sign and ensure peace comes to that region.
It's all about this right now. It's all about what you can get. It's all about how you get it. But Macron said something. Don't go in the way of taking those lands. Give the land back to the Ukrainian. How do you think all this will pan out?
Well, for me, I think what the Russians are doing is not to necessarily take the Ukrainian lands. They talk about the Donbass region. Russia was able to take over the Crimea region because they have nuclear warheads there. Because remember, it's like a border thing, whereby tribal interface goes across the borderline. Russian-speaking people were in Ukraine with a Ukrainian passport originally. And when the assault continued over the Minsk agreement, which Zelensky was clearly violating, and they're constantly killing those Russians living in those areas because they believed that they were rebellious against the Ukrainian government, which Russia spoke about. They had a Minsk agreement for 8 years. Over 13,000 Russian-speaking people living in Ukraine was being killed, which is why they kept asking for Russia to come in and save them. But because they had a pro-Russian president who understood what was happening, remember, Russia had the Nord Stream pipeline through Ukraine. They actually pay Ukraine loads and billions of dollars for accommodating their pipeline. So which means whether they call it Ukraine and Russia, there's always that understanding that they are one family. Because remember, they disintegrated from the USSR.
Yeah.
They are one family. So speaking of Russia wanting to take Ukraine's land, for you to occupy 20% of a land in a country of about 40-something million people, bro, that's a hell of a land. So I don't think Russia wants every part of the land they've occupied. But I think they want to, within those lands, also create a reasonable buffer zone, whereby there could be no interface between the area that Russia is looking out for and the Ukrainian country as a place.
This is a clear violation
of
Ukraine's territorial integrity.
No, wait.
Ukraine has their own land.
I just told you, the Donbass region is a region closer to Russia. It doesn't mean that the Donbass region covers is just around the 20% area that has been taken. Donbass and so many other areas have been covered. But I'm sure by the time peace comes to the table, Russia will pull out of those regions and just hold on to the Donbass region. Unless maybe the idea of Zelensky leaving continuously creates a problem. Maybe Russia may want to punish them by holding on to those areas they've covered. But I'm very certain that the idea of the Russian state wanting to say, well, we want peace, but at the same time, we will keep the Donbass region, because it is not everywhere in the Donbass region that the Russians were in initially. Remember, it is the Donbass region's residents that was being killed, which the Russian citizens were occupying to an extent closer to Russia that was being killed for 8 years. So by taking over the Donbass region, it's almost like covering every area that the Russian citizen who lives in Ukraine has covered. And I think that is what they want when they say the land, not necessarily the areas they've covered, because the areas they've covered is way beyond the Donbass
So you're justifying
region.
the encroachment of Russia into Ukraine, because that's what they're saying right now.
Because at the end, I'm not justifying it.
Because I never said that you and Honorable Garba were told the same line in this discussion.
I'm not justifying it, because you know why? Loads of lives have been lost, whether on the Ukrainian side or the Russian side. Any right-thinking human being would not support when innocent kids, women is being raped. Do you know what happens during war? There's a lot of extrajudicial killing. Even people who are walking on the street can just get fired. So what I'm trying to say to you is that when the little man constantly annoys the big man, and the big man cannot really do what he needs to do because the little man will cry back and want to demonize the big man. There are penalties for certain actions. I remember 3 years ago, before the war started, or when the war started, we were here on International Forum, and I made it very clear that Russia will win this war. If I tell you the amount of pounding that the Ukrainian has gotten from Russia, trust me, you will start to think, if there's no ulterior motive, what is really the interest of wise and intelligent Europeans and a wise and intelligent American president in Joe Biden? What are you really fighting for? Because the people you are working for, the people you are supporting, the people you are dragging into more indebtedness, and you're not having peace with Russia, Putin is breathing, for God's sake. Zelensky is hiding. So why should the war continue? So to me, I think at this point, if Russia want to go a step further, to even take areas they never really took before, when they pay the price, how can you blame them for that?
All right, now let's move straight down to New Jersey. It's like my analysts are just in support of this deal that will be struck so soon by Donald J. Trump. And I wonder why that is. Does it not mean that NATO don't have the capacity to support Ukraine, to really carry out this war, to push for it, to protect territorial integrity till the end? I mean, it's like U.S. backed out, NATO just started wobbling. What can one make out of that?
Yeah, sorry about it. Let me situate this a little bit differently. I don't think the United States is backing out. I would not want to say agree with that term, in the sense that America is simply protecting its own national interest, which is the right thing to do. If you look at this whole situation, it has cost the United States a lot to continue fighting or helping Ukraine prosecute its war in, its own war. Look at a situation that when this war started, the BRICS nation was this Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and of course South Africa. That was the BRICS, just 5 countries at a time. And due to US and EU sanctions and their allied sanctions on Russia, Russia is trying to find a way around those sanctions, help to grow the BRICS nation. And while growing the BRICS nation, they sneaked in this policy of de-dollarization, trying to break the US dollar. And it has since gained traction, because India and China, two of the most populous countries in the world, to the two most populous countries in the world, and with large economies, and in addition to Russia, teaming up together, what's not to the United States' advantage. And now the US is going in to try to extract Russia from the BRICS and see how they can break the ranks of the BRICS in their own national interest, as compared to funding a war in Europe that, even in victory for Ukraine, which would have been the ultimate goal of NATO, there was simply nothing in it economically for the United States, as against trying to break the ranks of the BRICS. So NATO, in Trump's first coming, in his first 4 years in office, he had gone to NATO with the same message, that, which is reiterating today, that you guys are not spending enough, for in your defense budget. You need to take it up. And the funding of NATO as at that time was that the United States was paying over 22%, the cost of funding NATO. And who was more threatened? The European countries and not the United States. So Donald Trump is just not seeing the logic in the United States spending much more money than those who are under immediate threat of, Russian attack. So he's urged them to do the right thing, spend more money on your defense budget, which they will agree to but will not implement. But right now, you see, they are having a series of meetings in Paris, and they're trying to right now jack up their defense spending to avert any push by Russia. So the United States, is pursuing its national interest, its economic interest, both short-term, mid-term, and long-term. And the only way to make this happen is to ensure that India, China, and Russia are not allowed, to continue to be in the same economic bloc without the United States. So I think that is where all of this is heading, to break the ranks of the BRICS nation. Though it's covert, but I think that's what's going to culminate in on the long run.
Etiosa Igbo, how do you think all this will pan out? Do you see Ukraine? Because Zelensky have already sworn that that will be over his dead body. He's not going to let Russia occupy an inch of Ukraine. Maybe that's the reason why he was thrown off the negotiation table, because he doesn't want to bend, doesn't want to shift because of his love for Ukraine. Do you see them ceding those lands to Russia?
I see him as an agent of destruction. He's powerless.
He's protecting his own country. Would you blame him for that? And this was a president once supported by U.S. President Joe Biden. Some are saying it's because this, like, a Republican agenda.
Maybe that's why he's at war, because you are not winning and you're still talking. I mean, what is he talking about? For God's sake, even a kindergarten will understand that a man that has lost a battle should not be talking anymore. What is Zelensky talking about? You will not allow an inch, you are borrowing arms. You will not allow an inch, all your business and economies, the cities are being bombarded to rubble. Thousands of people have been killed. Just from the analysis, 8 million has left. Another 8 million has been displaced within the country. And a 40 plus million population. What is he talking about? So on that note, I think we should just allow Zelensky move out that seat unless somebody else from Ukraine. I don't think it's everybody in Kiev that agrees with Zelensky's style of leadership. Because it's that war, there's no exit point. You have an entry strategy that is not yours. You have no idea or any exit strategy. You just keep committing your people in the firing line in an open farmland to get slaughtered by a stray bullet from nowhere. That is by the wayside. In the issues of Europe not being able to defend themselves, or maybe the BRICS nation, like my brother was talking about, I don't think at this point the U.S. has the capacity to stop a moving train. What the war has created, like he said, has created a more union between the two most populous countries and Russia. And now they're creating an alternative currency, which they have already put in top gear. I don't see any reason why they would want to come back, because if a communist country like China that can continuously roll its own communist idea to lead China are in place, and the Western world will criticize them that their democracy is not a proper democracy, and the Russia president can remain in power for this long and beyond. Perhaps in India, another populous country, are now working with the Russian state and the Chinese and other BRICS nations to expand their coast. I think Saudi Arabia is also working with the BRICS nation. What power does the U.S. have to now stop the dollarization of their nation in terms of business? Because they see that the dollar is used as a weapon. Why should they give them such ability to keep using it maybe in the next 20, 30 years? I think the issue of the BRICS nation will keep growing. I think one time Nigeria said they want to interface with the BRICS nation.
Yeah, they've done that
so
already.
I don't think with Russia being a superpower and a nuclear power, with China being a nuclear power, India being a nuclear power, and other countries in the world or in the BRICS nation, I don't think the U.S. has the capacity at this point to stop the issue of BRICS nation getting stronger.
All right.
However, there can be a kind of a common grounds whereby they constantly do businesses together. I don't think, if you ask me, if not for an idea, an ideology, which means there are people who think in a certain way.
All right.
Whether they're in a good place or not, whether things are not the way it's supposed to be or not, they believe that this person is their enemy. Why should a country that has had diplomatic ties, Russia that supplies and do business with Europe,
All right.
makes a lot of money from Europe,
Thank
now
you.
want to be a threat to Europe?
Thank you so much. We're going to have the last line from Honorable Yegariba. If you're to be Zelensky right now, Honorable, what would be your next line of action? Briefly, our time is up.
Well, he needs to take the peaceful route because, like I've said throughout this conversation, Zelensky is not in the driving seat in this whole process. And he's lost a lot. He's caused tremendous destruction has happened in Ukraine. He's lost a lot of territory. He's lost a lot of citizens. And they need to start thinking of rebuilding because don't forget, this is the largest military escalation of war in Europe since the Second World War, and it was
Thank you.
unexpected. So it needs to end.
Thank you so much. Let's see if Zelensky will really give peace a chance, or they're going to come to another election to show him the exit. But come on, the U.S. was once a strong ally of Zelensky. Right now, about the man at the helm of affairs that is not in support of what Zelensky is doing. Is this all a political gimmick? Only time will tell. We'll do it again next week, Tuesday, God willing. Bye for now.